And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake, Humboldt, and Ankeny, Iowa. Well, how are you today? Hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself, and welcome to today's program. Today we're going to be discussing aging. And of course, this is something that none of us want to discuss. We don't even want to think about it. We've probably all maybe had parents or grandparents or friends, or maybe even we ourselves have said, and I quote, "getting old stinks." There's no question about it. There's always some degree of ache or pain or limitation or liability as we age. But today, we want to discuss the topic of aging, not from the standpoint of aches and pains and that sort of thing, but we want to talk about aging with regards to how that affects you financially. And when maybe you see those things in a spouse, maybe you see those things in yourself, maybe you're just the person who likes to think ahead. And I'm a big proponent of that, being prepared, digging the well before you're thirsty, fixing that roof while the sun is shining. Those are the things that we want to do here, now, today, so that we don't have to deal with the fallout or the consequences of being ill-prepared tomorrow. Now, before we get into this topic, I really encourage you, if you're brand new here, aside from a warm welcome, I encourage you, go to our website, johnsonwim.com, stands for wealthincomemanagement.com, where there is a tremendous amount of helpful financial information. Things that are going to be financially relevant, things that are going to be written in plain English. If you've been maybe all of your life just relying upon the 401k, the 403b, you really don't have a financial advisor, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to be a little afraid, because oftentimes we get plenty of help when it comes to accumulating, but we get very little help when it comes to distributing. And as a person who has really focused his firm and his expertise on that of the distribution stage of life, I hope the information on our website is helpful to help you better gain understanding of what it's going to take that big bucket of money that you work so hard to save and turn it into income that you can spend every single month without the fear of running out of money. I also encourage you, get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement. If you're more of the reader, you're going to really appreciate not only the visualizations, but also the stories, the things that help these main principles of financial distribution stick in your mind. I don't know about you, but anytime I hear a story, stories always stick better than facts. And so it's something that I encourage you to get. And when you're done with it, give it to a friend, give it to a family member, pay it forward, and pass that information on. So as an advisor, as a fiduciary, I think that I have kind of a very interesting viewpoint, a very interesting objective when I look at individuals, when I deal with them for years and years and years. And have you ever maybe said it to one of your children? You haven't seen a child or a grandchild for maybe a few weeks, maybe even a month or more, and then you see them and you're like, oh my goodness, it looks as though you've gotten bigger. It looks as though you've gotten taller. It looks as though you've aged. Sometimes because we see individuals very consistently, we tend to lose sight of how they're aging. We tend to lose sight of how they may be slipping. And of course, you and I don't want to ever acknowledge that we're slipping. We don't want to ever acknowledge that things are getting by us. I get it. I really do. As a man, I want to feel as though I'm in control. And I know even women want to feel that way. They want to feel as though they got all their 52 cards stacked up in an order. But you know what? Aging does stink, and aging waits for absolutely no one. It affects all of us. And as we get older, we know that things are going to change for us. Now, we don't know the who, the what, the why, the where, the how. We don't know any of those things. But we do realize that this is something that, well, age progresses forward, it marches forward, it waits for absolutely no one. And in some capacity, though we hope to escape it, we hope to get around it, well, we know that there is none of that. Or at least very few of us will be able to, have that massive heart attack and just be gone. So in today's conversation, I want to have a conversation as to what are the things that would be worthwhile to prepare and to have prepped in the event that you start to begin noticing things, or you're just one of those individuals that likes to do things in advance, which I'm all for. Number one, I want to deal with a very difficult topic to touch on, and that is that as advisors, we see our clients approximately every 6 months. And we can notice changes. We can notice subtle differences in how a man or a woman behaves, how they speak, how they think, how they process information. And though we're no doctor, we can perceive as human beings, as individuals that know you fairly well, that things are changing for you. And one of the things that I've noted many times is that a husband or a wife, we may be noticing that things are starting to slip with that spouse, with that wife, and yet the husband seems to be completely oblivious to it, or the husband is maybe in a very subtle state of denial, where he's just explaining it away, saying, well, this is just my wife, and this is who she is, and this is how she behaves, when in reality we know differently. Now, what I find interesting is that women are more apt to become acknowledging of the fact of when they start to see their spouse slip. They begin to be more vocal about it. They tend to perceive that there are indeed differences that they're seeing and that they're observing. Maybe it's because they're more, say, observant. And as a result, they may be more likely to bring it up to one of us. I'm starting to see Phil slip a little. I'm starting to see him fail in this area or that area. But the reality is that regardless of whether you acknowledge it, acknowledging it is one of those things that I think can be very helpful, but it now brings you to a point of acceptance where now you can start to realize this is not abnormal. This is not anything to be embarrassed about. This is where I want to be able to make certain that I have things in order and have things prepared. So what are those things? So we're going to go through a bit of a short list. If this is something that maybe you've wondered about, something that you have thought, well, where do I need to begin? Because I have no idea. Maybe this list will help you. The first thing that I've discussed multiple times, but we cannot emphasize it enough, that is so very vital and important to an aging individual, an aging couple, is going to be the financial powers of attorney and the medical powers of attorney. Now, what does that mean? It does not mean that you are relinquishing your rights to make decisions. What that means is that as long as you are cognitive, you are able to make good, sound financial decisions on your own, you don't need a power of attorney. However, as things do change, as things may occur in your life, whether it could be health related, could be an accident, quite honestly, we may reach a point where a spouse now needs to intercede for us. A spouse or a child, maybe even a grandchild, if that happens to be your situation. And that financial or medical power of attorney allows them the opportunity of being able to advocate for us. So in other words, if you're in a position where you aren't very cognitive, there are things that are getting by you, you cannot make sound financial decisions, that power of attorney, whether it's a spouse, a child, a grandchild, is able to then intercede and write checks to pay your utility bill, be able to speak with the financial advisor and distribute required minimum distributions, take withdrawals from the bank. And you're not relinquishing rights. What you're doing is you're allowing a person whom you have chosen, whom you have named as an advocate. And remember, the powers of attorney are limited. They cannot go into, financial institutions. For instance, a child, that is one of four who's been named the financial power of attorney can't come to me as the financial advisor, to any of my advisors, and go, okay, well, I'm going to list myself as the sole beneficiary of this account. It doesn't happen that way. They are limited powers of attorney. But here's the thing. If you have maybe had powers of attorney that have been executed many, many years ago, I really want you to hear me. This is something where you want to freshen it up. Even though to my knowledge, and I am no attorney, that there is no expiration date of medical or financial powers of attorney, my experience has taught me that many financial institutions, and this could be a custodian like Vanguard or Fidelity, it could be a financial institution like your local bank. These financial institutions, if they get a copy of a POA that they feel is questionable, that they feel is too old or too out of date in their mind, well, they have every legal right to reject it and ask for a new one. And my friends, this is kind of insulting to many people. It's also very upsetting and can create a lot of difficulty, especially when maybe a child is trying to intercede properly for a parent, and yet that parent is completely now in a position where they cannot sign their name, or they can't make any financial sound decisions. They don't know what's going on. And the bank says, no, I'm sorry, that's too old of a power of attorney. My friends, that is not the time that you want to find something like that out. This is something where you want to be already prepared. You want to have a sense of urgency to get this done. I encourage clients that approximately every 5 years, they want to get that power of attorney up to date. And this is the thing that you will run into both on the medical as well as on the financial side, but probably more so on the financial side. These are institutions that are just simply trying to cover their hiney. They're trying to cover the liability of accepting a power of attorney that may indeed be old, out of date, and no longer relevant. So pay careful attention to powers of attorney. You need one, your spouse needs one. You need to not only potentially have one another as the financial POA for each other, but you need to also list a backup, which is otherwise known as a secondary. And then I would encourage you, go for a third, because you might list your son Jimmy, and Jimmy might indeed be a wonderful financial power of attorney, but what happens if Jimmy is potentially out of the country when he's needed? What happens if Jimmy is unable or unwilling to serve, or something's in his life that's preventing him from helping you in the position of power of attorney? This is where you need to have that third backup to the secondary power of attorney. Next on the list is going to be something that I've also discussed. All of these things, I think, in one way, shape, or form I have discussed, but these are good, relevant topics to go through, and that is beneficiary designations. You and I might think that there are many financial institutions, many financial accounts that we can't list beneficiaries on, but I failed to really know of many at all in which we cannot tell an institution, I want to list a beneficiary. In this particular case, we want to be going through with a fine-tooth comb, and we want to be looking at every single account we have our names on, that we have money in. This is going to be from something as simple as our checking and our savings and CDs, and just we'll call it bank accounts in general, working with the bank to see if we can list them as pay on death, or we can list beneficiaries, to certainly making certain if you have brokerage accounts, if you have IRAs, if you have old dormant 401ks or 403bs, you have life insurance, you have annuity contracts. These are all things that you want to make absolutely sure of to have beneficiaries, or to have a joint tenancy or some degree of a plan legally speaking, for these accounts to be able to convey and to transfer to. This is so very vital. And I know it's a lot of work because guess what? As human beings, we tend to collect things over the course of time. And we kind of have a little bit of money here and a little bit of money there. It can be very overwhelming. But my friends, this is something to say that either A, we have to be very diligent in finding all of the accounts and making certain we have them together and we have them on the same page so that they go where we want them to go. And it would be helpful for your kids and grandkids to have a list, write things out, document it, spreadsheet it, put it on a Word document on your computer, your laptop, your tablet, something, in order to be able to give them indications as to where these dollars are. Or you're going to be in a position where potentially it's now time to begin to consolidate. And, consolidating is a very underrated thing, I believe. Because here's the thing, as we age, we get older and things start to slip. Now we're in a position where, guess what? We realize that maintenance and administration is more and more of a thing. It's a big deal. And the more accounts we have out there, the more difficult it seems to be. Things get by us and things start to slip. Next on the list, I'm going to encourage you to begin having conversations with your children. Oftentimes I think financial advisors feel a bit intimidated when children can get involved. And I get it. I understand. Sometimes children can come from a very different perspective than their parents, where you've been, the advisor working with the parent for many, many years. Children can say, well, I don't understand why you have X and why you have them in this. And I don't understand why you did this or you didn't do that. I get that. I think every single advisor that's been in the business for any length of time has or will experience that to some extent. And you know what? Accountability is a good thing. Being able to give an answer is a good thing. But at the same time, if you're a child, you're watching this, you're listening to this, I encourage you to have some ability of listening and asking good, sound questions. Instead of coming through and being that bull in the china shop, you're basically asking good quality questions. You are holding accountable through those questions, but you're waiting for answers that would be satisfactory. And hopefully, Lord willing, you get those answers. But here's the thing. For you as an aging parent, I think it's important to get your kids involved, because oftentimes kids are too pleasant. Kids are in a position where, well, that's none of my business. And I get that. That's how we were raised as kids as well. But you know what? As we watch our parents getting older, we kind of need to know, where are things headed? Where are things at? What are these things invested in? What's happening with these things? Because as a child, we want to make certain to take care of our parent, not just from a physical standpoint, but also in other aspects. And it's hard to do that if we don't know where everything is. And it's good for those children to get involved, to develop relationships with the advisors in the various different financial institutions, primarily because when you, the client, passes away, guess what? Those children are going to be working with those financial institutions. Those children are going to be working with those advisors. And so sitting down, meeting with the advisor, the various different institutions, the individuals that help you with those accounts, and being able to express yourself and say, listen, I feel like things are maybe beginning to slip, or I feel that I'm getting older and I want to make certain I've got my house in order. My friends, all those things are very appreciated conversations. And we want to do our very best as your advisor to help you feel comfortable and to help you to feel as though you are going to be well taken care of regardless of what happens to you health-wise. Last but not least is going to be really reviewing plans with professionals. And I know I kind of touched on this, getting your kids involved and then getting with the professionals. But in this particular case, we really need to have sit-down conversations. And that is my estate plan in order? Are my beneficiaries in order? Are my liquidity needs available? You see, all of these things, as we get older, we want to realize that there could be a change in us, there could be a change in our spouse, And we want to be prepared for that. We want to understand the taxable consequences. If all of a sudden we have to begin dipping into a particular type of an account in order to pay for our wife's long-term care or our husband's home health care or assisted living. Those are all things that are important. And though I'm sure that you're sharp and you could probably look at your accounts and remember and figure out what is going to be first for you to begin to dip into for things of that nature, my friends, getting together and just having a good old-fashioned review is a very, very important thing. It keeps you fresh. It keeps you on top of the details. It allows you to write things down so that you can go back and re-review it. It helps you reconnect with your advisory firm and with the individuals that are helping you as your advisors. And it allows you the opportunity of being able to have that peace of mind and that mental satisfaction that if things were to occur, you know what's available, you know what it might cost you in taxes and how taxes will be mitigated or dealt with. And it also helps you to remember if you have what I call reimbursement plans. In other words, I've got a gentleman right now that I'm pretty certain that he is likely going to, within the next couple of years, probably require long-term care. And he's going to utilize some of his assets in order to be able to pay for that long-term care. But I also know that it's always been a very big concern of his that, you know what, I want to leave my kids a legacy. And that's where his life insurance comes into play. Because you see, his life insurance is going to be the thing that helps to replace what he utilizes in his own financial wealth and what he has accumulated in assets. And that's very, very important to remind him of, because legacy is a big deal. Now, granted, legacy may not be a big deal to you, and I respect that if that's the case. But in this particular instance, I know just my client, and I know how important it is for him to have an inheritance to his kids and to his grandkids. So my friends, hopefully, even though this isn't always pleasant to think about, what happens as we age, what happens as things start to fail and kind of go south, and we reach that stage where we start to acknowledge that getting older really stinks. It does, but there are things that we can do to help mitigate some of the, shall we say, inconveniences of age. And hopefully this has been a pretty succinct checklist that you can go through, that you can now say, this is the direction that I want to head. I want to check this off the list and this off the list and this off the list. Trust me, it will bring to you a great deal of peace of mind, and it will even help your professionals be now more up to date and aware of what you're thinking, what you're going through, and what current concerns and worries you might have, so that we can take best care of you as your advisor and your fiduciaries. My name is Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.